Solidarity in democracy. Lawmakers and experts from around the world gather in Taipei in a show of unity against authoritarianism. Calls for concern. US and South Korea wrap up defense talks, urging more cooperation in the Asia-Pacific region. Shop and shot. Supermarkets add one more service as Taiwan tries to make it easier to get vaccinated. A controversial figure. A new exhibition at Taipei's Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall takes a closer look at the former president of Taiwan. A warm welcome to TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. As we speak, delegates from over a dozen countries are taking part in the Open Parliament Forum here in Taipei. It's a two-day meeting bringing together lawmakers and experts for discussions on how to strengthen democracy worldwide. And as James Chater reports, the meeting not only bolsters Taiwan's international ties, but also demonstrates solidarity in the face of rising authoritarianism.
I take a great pride in sharing the experience of...
A delegate in the Georgian capital, Tbilisi, beams into the Open Parliament Forum. He's one of over 100 legislators and experts who have come together for the two-day meeting in Taipei. Discussion points have ranged from promoting trust in democratic governments to tackling disinformation.
We need to ensure that freedom of expression is preserved, but also our citizens are protected from certain hostiles that really wish to somehow induce the mistrust in states, in societies, in ability for ourselves to work together.
And it comes as President Tsai Ing-wen said on Thursday that Taiwan stands on the front line of democracy. Delegates from over a dozen European, Asian and Latin American countries are attending the forum amid an increased sense of urgency to bolster democratic institutions globally. And participants clearly want to preserve the information that's on offer. Behind me, delegates from around the world on stage and online are discussing the best ways to protect democracy. And once it's over, they'll be taking what they've learned back to their home countries. The forum is the culmination of a 10-day visit to Taiwan from Lithuanian, Latvian and Estonian lawmakers.
We hope to come up with how to deal with the authoritarian neighbor, Taiwan. We have vis-à-vis China and Baltic countries, Russia.
And a common belief in democratic values mean all parties are determined to get the most from the experience.
所以其实我们互相学习了蛮多关于国会深化民主，然后数位化的方面，然后以及如何一起守护民主自由。
It's not just information from panels that delegates will be taking home, but the relationships built from corridor conversations.
From people to people, we are sharing good practices, experiences, and building stronger bridges. Because first, the connection between two persons is made, and then the connection between states can be made, and then international alliances.
The Open Parliament Forum comes ahead of the US-led Summit for Democracy scheduled for next week. Taiwan is included, but China is not invited. Digital Minister Audrey Tang will represent Taiwan at the summit and has hit back at China's opposition to her attendance.
There will be, in the future, more summit gatherings for democracy. So for all the governments and peoples around the world who feel maybe slighted that they have not been invited as a participant, my suggestion is to double down on realizing democracy.
But back on this front line, the quiet work of strengthening democracy continues. Damon Lin and James Chater for TaiwanPlus.
Leading the Baltic delegation to Taiwan is Lithuanian MP Matas Maldeikis, who is also the head of the Lithuanian Parliament's Taiwan Friendship Group. He spoke to me from the sidelines of the Open Parliament Forum to discuss his impressions of Taiwan and why Europeans have changed their views on China.
Their policy in Europe is backfiring. They played their cards straight. We European Union countries see what they are made of. It's espionage, stealing intellectual property. It's pressing the politicians, pressing the press, saying it's a question of sovereignty for those countries in the end of the day. And that starts to backfire. Europeans really love to have their own sovereignty, and China has a problem. I think it's now starts to realize that.
Lithuania is a small country of 2.7 million people. Why do you think China feels so threatened by Lithuania's relations with Taiwan?
Because it understands that it's a question of example. Europeans will start to look what is happening, that there is a win-win situation in terms of economy, in terms of having to deal with a country where is democracy, rule of law, clear game play rules. And it's a question of time when those peoples will start to ask their governments why we are dealing with China, where a lot of people absolutely horrifying problems of human rights. There is no rule of law, no democracy, and we are dealing with this country only because of big market.
Lithuania's foreign minister was recently in Washington. Do you think that China's downgrading of ties with Lithuania has pushed you closer to the US?
We are starting a new era, and in this new era, we want to find our niche, our place, and we are on a clear side of democracy, because in the end, it's a question of national security. If we want to stay as a country free, prosperous, create our own economy, create our own destiny, we have to deal with democracies and help one another.
What is your biggest takeaway so far from your Taiwanese experience?
I felt how important being the democracy for Taiwanese and for Taiwan in this geopolitical circumstances. I feel the need of Taiwanese to be understood in the world. And I'm feeling that we are standing on the brink of something very different from what we experience regarding this region. And that takes you to the heart, and you feel like a little ashamed that you can do so little in a sense of this big world. But we are trying. All the small steps leads to something bigger. I'm sure of that.
Taiwan's President Tsai Ing-wen has made the Financial Times list of the world's most influential women for the second year running. The citation said Tsai continues to demonstrate through her leadership how Taiwan's values are distinct from China's. The paper said Tsai does not buckle in the face of intimidation. The 25 women on this year's list also include Hong Kong democracy activist Agnes Chow, Ugandan climate activist Vanessa Nakate, and the US House Speaker Nancy Pelosi. The list was drawn up by FT journalists, previous winners of the accolade, and the paper's readers. The United States and the European Union have expressed strong concern over China's actions in the Taiwan Strait. The remarks were included in a joint statement following the second meeting of the US-EU dialogue on China in Washington. The statement directly links peace and security in the Taiwan Strait and East and Southeast Asia to security and prosperity in the US and EU. Security talks between the US and South Korea have wrapped up, with both sides urging more cooperation in the region. With countries like Taiwan and South Korea at the forefront, the US is calling on allies to step up their defense efforts. Jaime Ocon reports.
US and South Korean defense officials have wrapped up annual security talks in Seoul. It's the first time the two sides have met since President Biden took office, with this year's talks primarily focused on the threats coming from North Korea and the rising capabilities of China. South Korean officials say that with a changing security environment, closer ties are needed with the U.S. to bolster its defenses.
한미 양국은 글로벌 파트너로서 전 세계 평화 안정 유지를 위해 함께 긴밀히 협력해 나갈 수 있는 방안을 지속 모색해 오고 있는 중입니다. 이러한 차원에서 양국은 우선 특정국의 위협을 상정해 놓고 논의하기보다는 우리의 신남방 정책과 미국의 인태 전략 간의 상호 협력을 모색해 나가고 있다는 말씀을 드리겠습니다.
But North Korea isn't the only country that could undermine stability in the region. China has continued its aggression in areas like the Taiwan Strait and the South China Sea, and recent displays of new hypersonic capabilities are proving to be a challenge.
So regarding hypersonics, as we've said before, we have concerns about the military capabilities that the PRC continues to pursue. And the pursuit of those capabilities increases tensions in the region. We'll continue to maintain the capabilities to defend and deter against a range of potential threats from the PRC to ourselves and to our allies.
U.S. allies like Taiwan are feeling those capabilities firsthand. This week alone, 53 Chinese warplanes have entered Taiwan's defense zone. As the rivalry between the U.S. and China intensifies, countries like Taiwan and South Korea are seeking more than just promises from their biggest military ally. The fear is that the longer Washington takes, the bolder China will get. Chris Ma and Jaime Okan for TaiwanPlus.
Russia has deployed its Bastion coastal missile systems to Matua, the central island in the disputed Kuril Island chain. The move is seen as Russia strengthening its stance in a territorial dispute with Japan. Japan claims 4 of the southernmost islands of the Kuril chain. In recent years, Moscow has increased its military presence in its Far East region. The long-running dispute has prevented the two countries from formally ending their Second World War hostilities. With a drastic rise in COVID-19 cases this month, Germany has announced a nationwide lockdown for unvaccinated people. The country's vaccination rate is at around 68%. Under the tightened restrictions, unvaccinated people will be banned from all non-essential shops, as well as cultural and recreational venues. If approved by the German parliament, the mandate could take effect from February. As the world awaits more information on the transmissibility of the Omicron variant, the WHO has said that vaccination is still the best protection. In Taiwan, only around 57% of the population has received 2 doses, and efforts are underway to make the shots more accessible. Our reporter Sandy Chi has the details.
In an effort to encourage more people to get their second COVID-19 shots, hospitals in Taiwan have extended their vaccination hours to late as midnight. But soon people may not need to go to a hospital or even make an appointment. They'll be able to get jabbed on a trip to the supermarket.
有跟全联这边有谈，就是说他们也提供了174个点啊，我们就是全国有174个点，接种就会有提供一些赠品之类。
In-store vaccination trials are already underway in southern Taiwan when the Pingtung County government and a department store are offering Moderna shots over a 5-day period.
各县市相关可以提供方法，那么到百货公司到哪里，这个就是可及性、进变性，让它这样。
And while the only known protection against current COVID strains is vaccination, a longer-term plan is underway to address the issue of variants like Omicron. In an exclusive interview with the local Taiwanese news channel, Wang Qihui, a recent winner of a prestigious global award in chemistry, said he was working on what he calls a broadly protective vaccine that could be effective against all variants of COVID-19.
假如是靠抗体来对付这个要感染细胞的部位的话，它如果一直突变，这个抗体就会慢慢的 减低效果，但是我们的疫苗的设计不止抗体，你要引起 T 细胞。
He's developing the vaccine with a team at Academia Sinica, a prestigious Taiwan research institute, and they now have a temporary patent in the U.S.
一旦一个病毒扩散变成那个大流行，几乎没有办法灭绝了，所以我们要有心理准备啊，这个病毒可能跟着我们了。
Wang says he has high hopes that his vaccine could one day help us to coexist with the COVID-19 virus in all its mutations. Alex Chen and Sandy Chi for TaiwanPlus.
Democratic Progressive Party legislator Gao Jiayu has expressed thanks for the support she has received since going public with claims of domestic violence. Earlier this week, Gao filed a police report against her partner for physical assault. He has been taken into custody. Gao said she intends to use her position to fight for changes to Taiwan's domestic abuse laws. Coming up, we take a closer look at Chiang Kai-shek and speak to one of the thousands of Taiwanese that fled the country during the former president's crackdown on opposition. Stay with us.
人要了解的是，我们跟这片土地关系里面，它是跟你的生命的根源息息相关。像这个红冠、扁柏等等，他们都是台湾的神明。长期以来，我一直误以为我在抢救山林，直到最近10年来，我才了解，我从来没有抢救山林，而是山林从来在抢救我们。我们的地球46亿年来，我们就是它的一部分，它就是我们共同的灵魂，流传在我的血液中，也流动在树叶当中。
Welcome back. You're watching TaiwanPlus News. Local language classes are set to become mandatory in Taiwan's high schools and middle schools by the start of the 2022 academic year. Languages covered by the Development of National Languages Act include Hokkien Taiwanese, Hakka, Matsu's Eastern Min, Indigenous languages and Taiwan Sign Language. 7th and 8th graders can choose to study one local language class a week, while local language courses in high schools will be assigned 2 credits. The policy was already in place for elementary schools, but the Education Ministry now faces a challenge in finding enough qualified teachers.
原住民族的语言有非常多的语言，可能在目前来讲，师资的这部分会是一个比较大的挑战。
A new exhibition at Taipei's Chiang Memorial Hall is taking a closer look at the controversial former president of Taiwan. It's been called a step toward breaking the myth of a man who is often regarded as a national hero, but who ruled with an iron fist. Rick Glowett has this report.
In the heart of Taipei, Taiwan's former president Chiang Kai-shek gazes out over the city from the top of his grand memorial hall. Behind his smile, this statue and the Chiang Kai-shek Memorial Hall are at the center of a fierce debate over how Taiwan should tackle its authoritarian past.
我们就是希望跟各界持续来讨论，也有人提应该是国会啊，也有人提应该是人权馆的分馆啊，有人觉得是台湾美术馆啊。那我们觉得重点就是说它要转型。
As the debate rages on, a new exhibition inside the hall and beneath the statue challenges the image of Chiang as a benevolent national hero. Born in eastern China, Chiang Kai-shek took the helm of the Republic of China based in Nanjing in 1928. After leading the Republic of China to victory in the Second World War and taking control of Taiwan from the Japanese, Chiang and his nationalists lost the Chinese Civil War to the Chinese Communist Party. He moved his government from China to Taiwan in 1949, along with 2 million of his nationalist forces. While the exhibition does show how the Generalissimo led Taiwan to become a manufacturing hub, prompting an economic boom in the 1970s and 80s, it also exhibits details of Chiang's role in Taiwan's February 28 incident and White Terror period, when tens of thousands of opponents to his authoritarian rule were arrested, imprisoned, or even killed. Taiwan's culture minister has said that this new exhibition is a step toward breaking the Chiang Kai-shek myth that the statue above us portrays. And browsing the exhibitions here, you get the sense that the organizers have worked hard to give a fuller, more balanced history of one of Taiwan's most controversial figures. Its visitors appear undecided on how to deal with the contradictions of a man that now runs counter to Taiwan's identity as a free and liberal democracy.
因为他是带领的军队嘛，然后我们才有这个地方可以居住生活。但是他也有就是不好的一面是像228事件那样。
Many Chiang Kai-shek statues removed from the streets of Taiwan end up here in a park surrounding his mausoleum. The country's Transitional Justice Commission, set up by President Tsai Ing-wen after she swept to power in 2016, is charged with handling the images and statues of Chiang Kai-shek that dot the country. Many feel they display an integral part of Taiwan's history. but they are also a painful reminder for victims of oppression under Chiang's regime.
基本上这些应该要拿掉的，对，我不觉得应该有一个铜像这么大放在这里，尤其是在台湾。好跟不好，这个我们很难做一个主观的这个判断。
民主运动最激烈的时候，那个时候的人有没有要拆除蒋介石的铜像？没有。台湾现在最重要的事是不是把蒋介石拆掉，就什么事都没了呢？
One of the most poignant exhibits is a collection of documents proving Chiang urged the execution of political dissidents and signed their lives away. It is a stark contrast to the smiling face of the statue that presides over the memorial hall.
It's depicting him as an overall honorable person, as someone who we should honor and respect. And many people who see the fact that he oversaw this violent oppression of people during the White Terror period disagrees. He's not someone we should honor and respect.
It is a sensitive subject for many Taiwanese, weighing up the legacy of a man revered by some and condemned by others.
Why the memorial hall and the statues are controversial is because they demand a kind of particular memory of the past, of remembering him as an honorable and respectable figure. And at the very least, we should tell a more complicated history.
At the exhibition opening, the culture minister sidestepped the statue controversy.
整个转型正义不必要集中在具体具象化到一个铜像是不是要拆的问题。其实一个转型正义涉及的面向非常的多那么铜像要怎么处理也不是最优先的问题所以我想这个部分大家再继续沟通吧。
So the debate over how to confront a violent past rages on. And, just like inside the hall, the figure of Chiang Kai-shek looms over modern Taiwan. Rick Yi and Rick Lowett for TaiwanPlus.
Chiang Kai-shek's crackdown on opposition sent thousands of Taiwanese into exile. Among them was Strong Trung, who fled to the United States in 1965 and stayed there. He dedicated his life to the Taiwan's democracy movement and was put on a blacklist of Taiwan independence activists. Rick Lowett spoke to the 83-year-old and his son, Tim Juang. He told Rick Lowett that changing the name is the first step in transitional justice.
The first step, you should normalize the country's name. The country's name should not be ROC, should be only Taiwan. And the constitution needs to be rewritten and be established, which is fit for today's Taiwan's environment and international truth, true fact. Reflected the whole China is not a part of Taiwan. That kind of funny constitution content.
So what does Chiang Kai-shek mean to you and your family?
The number one feeling that my parents have taught me was anger and hate. And when we see his image still honored by Taiwanese people after he's massacred, imprisoned, and tortured Taiwanese people, that shows that there's no sense of that transitional justice. In Taiwan's past, he was responsible for such violence towards the Taiwanese people. But if we're going to look at Taiwan's future, being in the diaspora in 1971 and 72, my father's and his comrades knew that the United Nations had given the Republic of China an opportunity to stay in the United Nations. Chiang Kai-shek just needed to change the name of the Republic of China to Taiwan, and then Taiwan would be represented in the United Nations. He refused. So not only did Chiang Kai-shek sabotage Taiwan's peaceful past through the actions of White Terror and 228, he sabotaged Taiwan's future.
What does transitional justice mean for you and your family?
The blacklist was something that many people in Taiwan are not aware of. For the Taiwanese diaspora, when they left Taiwan, if they stood up for Taiwan's self-determination or human rights in Taiwan in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, they were not allowed to go back to Taiwan. I myself couldn't even go visit Taiwan until I became an adult because my father and mother's involvement in the Taiwanese democracy movement. So transitional justice would mean that Taiwan can actually stand up for itself as Taiwan, not as representing the Republic of China, but just representing Taiwan. Until that happens, I think there's going to be a lot of unresolved feelings for Taiwan's past and Taiwan's future.
Do you feel that Taiwan has made progress in confronting its authoritarian past in the last few years?
I'm actually very impressed with young Taiwanese people embracing Taiwan as their homeland, because in the 80s and 90s, when I met many people from Taiwan, they actually were very ashamed of being from Taiwan. And they actually tried to say, if you were Taiwanese, that no, you're Chinese. We're all Chinese. And there was less, and yes, this was a result of the education system in Taiwan, but I see that the young people in Taiwan no longer have that fear and almost a shame of their own Taiwanese identity. And there's a searching for their history, their background, their language past, which actually bodes well for the future of Taiwan and Taiwanese nationalism.
Thanks for watching TaiwanPlus News. I'm Yin Khvat. We leave you with pictures of a 12-ton Christmas tree that lights up New York. For more stories from Taiwan and around the world, please download the TaiwanPlus app. Stay safe and see you next time.